host for the next 4 town halls you'll be viewing for the next 3 months. The town halls are being presented by the 100 Black Men of Syracuse Incorporated as a result of the 100 Black Men of America's National Institutes of Health and Morehouse School of Medicine's Health and Wellness Grant. The 4 town halls that we're asking you to view are Violence Prevention, Healthcare 2.0, and COVID-19, Brain and Mental Health, and Cancer Awareness. To help give us a better understanding of the problems and solutions of today's town hall, entitled Violence Prevention, are Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner of the Syracuse Police Department, Charles Pierce L., and Clifford Ryan, both community residents. We ask that you put your questions in the Q&A box if you're watching us on Zoom, and we'll have questions and answers after each presentation for about 5 minutes. And then we will also have an open forum if there is time at the end of the 3 presentations. If you're on Facebook, we welcome you, those of you who are joining us on Facebook Live, and we're looking forward to hopefully getting your participation as well. We remind you that there's also a survey that we would like each of you to fill out at the end of the virtual town hall. So please, you should have received that already. And if you haven't received it, we'll drop it into the chat a little bit later on. And we remind you to please fill it out and let us know how we did. Well, our first presenter is Chief Kenton Buckner, who was sworn in as Chief of Police for the Syracuse Police Department on December 3rd, 2018. Prior to his appointment, he served as the chief for the Little Rock Police Department from 2014 to 2018. Now, his law enforcement career began in 1993. He served 23 years with the Louisville Metro Police Department and rose to the position of assistant chief, holding key operational and administrative positions before retiring there in 2014 and then moving on, of course, to Little Rock. He received both a master's and a Bachelor of Science degrees from Eastern Kentucky University, and most recently, he completed a senior executives in state and local government at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. He is a proponent of community policing and has always worked to develop strong relationships with community stakeholders, along with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. So why are we having this conversation today? I'm going to share my screen quickly so you can see what we're talking about here. In 2019, gunshot victim Joel Saldana was Syracuse's 31st homicide victim of 2020, matching 2016 for the most in the city's history. There were 20 homicides in 2019. The 5-year average in Syracuse is 18. And from January 1st through November 2020, the number of shots fired calls in Syracuse increased by 144% compared to all of 2019. There were 723 shots fired in the first 10 months of 2020 compared to 501 in all of 2019. It's within that backdrop that we welcome Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner to give us some perspective, and the chief will have 10 minutes to give us some information. Chief, take it away, and welcome to this first town hall.
Thank you, George. Thank you to 100 Black Men for hosting this event. Thank you to our viewing audience for being here. I have 10 minutes, so I'll move rather quickly. Thank you for engaging us in this exercise. I think it's important that the community be informed and also use that information to empower themselves to move forward to solve some of the issues that we're going to talk about today. I want to give you a brief overview of crime in our city from the city of Syracuse. We break our crime in, as we report to the FBI annually, into 2 categories: property crime and violent crime. 80% of the crime in the city of Syracuse is actually property crime, even though most of our headlines are about violent crime. Overall, for the year last year, our crime was down 7%. That includes both combining violent crime numbers and property crime numbers. Our violent crime was up 6%. Overall, our property crime numbers was down actually property crime number was down 10%. When you look at the 5-year average, overall, we were down 8% overall. The 5-year average, we were up in violent crime 12%, and we were down in property crime 12% for the 5-year average. The reason that that 5-year average number is important is one of the things that I often preach to our people is the sky never falls. We can have a sense of urgency. We can have critical moments. We can have incidents. We can have things that it cause us to have concern, but the sky never falls. And I truly believe that God is always in control despite whatever you're seeing. And we like to give some perspective as to kind of what it looks like over a multi-year period. So when you look at our crime, we're divided into 3 divisions. When I came here, I thought it was important to decentralize the department somewhat so that you would have a commander responsible for your geographical area 24 hours a day. The city is divided into our North Division, Southwest, and Southeast. Last year for the North Division, overall crime was down 10%, violent crime was up 7%, and property crime was down 13%. The 5-year average for the North Division was down 7% overall. For the Southeast district of the city, crime overall was down 8%. Violent crime was actually flat. It was at 0%. And then the property crime was down 9% overall, 17% down when you look at the 5-year average. Southwest Division is very, very critical to the conversation we're having today. As George indicated to you earlier, we had 31 homicides in the city of Syracuse last year. 15 occurred in the Southwest Division. Overall, violent crime was up 9% in the Southwest Division. Property crime was down 4%, and the division finished flat overall for their crime for last year. For the 5-year average, Southwest crime is up 7%. So common threads for our violent crime. When you look at violent crime in the city, there are 3 common denominators that you see in most violent crime. Some correlation to drugs, gangs, and domestic violence. Those are the 3 primary areas when you see violent crime occur in our city. Rarely will you have an unknown situation where John Doe does not know anything about the person that caused him harm. You rarely see that in our city. Most of our violent crime occurs through some sort of pre-existing relationship, even though that relationship may be short-term, but the individuals involved in the conflict know each other in some capacity, which is good because we don't have a lot of random violence in our city. The other part of that is obviously the domestic piece. That continues to be an issue when you talk about domestic relationships. And I think it's important to mention that violent crime was up significantly across the country, many of which people attribute some of that to the pandemic and some of the things that we have going on in our community. Next thing, so I want to talk to you about our crime control model. For the city of Syracuse, we subscribe to intelligence-led policing, which means that we have a mechanism to gather, analyze, and disseminate information to the officers and to the community to give us an ability to have traction with the crime that we're trying to prevent and to solve. The other part of that crime control model is once we have that information, we focus on 2 things, people and places, because we don't want to cast this wide net that we've seen some cities go through, which unintentionally causes harm in the communities, similar to what you saw with the stop and frisk with New York several years ago. We want to be specific about who we're delivering energy to and who we're focusing on. The next thing is you have is deployment of personnel. When our officers go out, they're given very strict information about where they should be, who they should be focusing on, and how they should be delivering that energy. In the fall of last year, we created a detail called the Gang Violence Suppression Detail. They've been out for several months now, and some of the numbers that George gave you were actually worse than there actually are now because we saw progress with this gang violence suppression detail. So that's what was a good indicator to us that we were having some success with that. Next thing, effective partnerships. This is an example of a partnership. And I'll talk a little bit about that more when I talk about community-oriented policing. But we have relationships with all of our federal partners, state police, and our county affiliates. It's very, very important with us that we be able to collectively try to go after some of these things, in addition to having the community, which is a part of that piece. But these effective partnerships and some of the things that you will see A good police department can take down an individual pretty easily when you focus on what that individual is doing. But working with other agencies, specifically federal, you can take down an organization rather than individuals, which is why those relationships are very important. Last piece of that is the community involvement, which is the piece that we're doing now, staying connected to the people that we're trying to serve, keep them informed in what's going on, and make sure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. Community policing, it's a term that you hear often thrown around and very casual definitions of it. I can tell you by definition, we believe it has three key ingredients: partnership, prevention, and problem solving. If you can't show your community tangible examples of those three ingredients, you're probably not doing community policing. I have some examples that I will have if asked, but I want to continue to get through my points. So remember, community policing for the Syracuse Police Department is partnerships first, prevention, and problem solving. If you're not doing those three, you do not have community policing. Lastly, and I'm at the 7.5 minute mark on my clock, George, is community engagement. Jimmy Oliver, who's well known in our community, very, very sharp young man, moved back to the city and was originally #2 in the Parks Department. We created the Office of Community Engagement, and we needed someone to have their 40, 50-hour-a-week job to be responsible for bridging the gap between the community that we serve and the police department. One of the things that we certainly saw during the protests is that there are significant strains, scars, mistrust, harm, a lot of different things that are not what we want that are going on in communities, including Syracuse. And so Jimmy's job is part of building those bridges back or strengthening the relationships that we already have. When you look at neighborhood watches, when you look at our citizens advisory groups, and then there are some key areas of the city that we also want to focus on: business, education, nonprofits, clergy, and social media. So going forward, when you look at some of the things that we're doing, specifically 2021, one of our key Super Bowl moments for the Office of Community Engagement will be is the creation of the Police Athletic League. If you're going to start anywhere in our city and you ask me, Chief, what can I do to get involved? 100% of the time, I will always point you to youth. When we start with them, we can prevent these kids from falling out of the classroom and landing in the back seats of our police cars, which I think is certainly paramount if we're going to have any significant traction for what's going on in our community today and how we move forward. George, that is my time and presentation. I think I am at, what's my stopwatch? 9:24.
You did
Bam!
good. You did good. All right. So listen, we have about 5 minutes. Actually, we'll give you 6, right? Because you didn't yield the remainder of your time. You yield the remainder of your time. So listen, if you have a question, please hit it up, put it into the Q&A right now. We have just a few moments with the chief. If you don't have a question for the chief, we'll move on to our next presenter, but we'll give you a moment to ask any question that you would like. Again, if you're watching on Zoom, drop it into the Q&A and let us know what your question is. If you're watching on Facebook, our Facebook watchers will get that question to us if there is a question coming in. And Chief, you talked about partnerships, community policing is partnerships, prevention, and problem solving. Can you give us an example of how that worked?
So let's talk about, for example, problem solving. One of the things that we were having, as I told you in the presentation, that 80% of our crime is property crime. So a big one is theft from automobiles. So we partnered with community organizations like Neighborhood Watch, like the TNT, to be able to use the email trees that those two organizations have to expand our email tree to get information about locking your vehicles, not leaving valuables in plain sight, descriptions of some of the cars that were in the neighborhoods so that people would know when you see those vehicles to be able to give us a call, and some of the patterns that we were seeing. So that was a problem-solving endeavor where we used a partnership with the goal of preventing or reducing that crime, and that has helped us by using it under the community policing initiative.
Chief, we do have a question. The question is from Marion Irvin. He says, what can we do to bring down crime and violence. What can we do to bring down crime and violence?
Well, crime and violence are the symptoms of other things gone wrong. When you see crime and violence come to the surface, there are many other socioeconomical issues that are already pre-existing before you see saturated crime in an area. Education system, lack of employment, substance abuse, mental illness, single parent homes, all of those things create a cocktail of despair. And when you see concentrated crime in an area, when you check those other pre-existing conditions, you're going to find those things. Police cannot solve those kinds of issues alone. We have an important piece in that problem-solving initiative, but there are many other people who need to be at the table, which is why I participate in these kind of endeavors, because I need help at the table to help me address some of those issues. So the answer is, it's not simple, which is why I'm not going to give them some cookie cutter response to that, but we have to have a holistic, comprehensive plan to be able to address many of the pre-existing issues, because just trying to arrest our way out of situations like this does not work. So this is the kind of initiative that helps to reduce crime in our community when police and community are working in concert.
Next question, Chief. This is from Joe. He wants to know, how was there such a small increase in violent crimes, but a sharp increase in homicides?
Well, you never really know why two individuals or when and where they're going to have their disagreement, which makes it very, very difficult to prevent a homicide. Homicides are up across the country. There's no question, in addition to those common denominators of drugs, gangs, and then also domestic violence, there's no secret that a lot of times they occur in our Black and brown communities. And we have individuals who are either unwilling or unable to have effective conflict resolution when you have a disagreement with someone that ultimately ends in violence. But again, you go back to that socioeconomical issue. You never can say that that this one thing causes us to have the kind of outcome that we had last year. But those are usually the areas when you're talking about prevention that you want to address: gang situations in your community, school issues that are going on in gang prevention with that, and certainly in education, and then getting those domestic violence victims separated, which George, you're very familiar with, separated from the violence first to put them in a safe environment. And then they need the resources to be able to prop themselves back up now that they're solo, in many instances, not having the financial piece that they had from the individual that was abusing them. Them accepting the help is a big part of that. And then us being able to get those services to them fairly quickly is a big piece of that domestic violence component.
Quick question from Elizabeth. Does the police department have a text by phone tip line? And if so, is it anonymous? I need a quick answer on this one.
Our tips are anonymous, yes.
Can you do it by text?
We do receive text, yes.
Oh, and so you can, so the answer is yes. Okay. Yes. All right. Chief Kenton Buckner will be here to answer some questions a little bit later on, but we need to move this. We need to move along. How about that? And Chief, thank you again for your time. And we've got more for you just a little bit later on. All right, Charles Pierce L. is our next presenter. He's a lifetime resident of Syracuse, New York, and a 50-year community activist. This activism intensified after his 30-year retirement from New Process Gear. He's currently chairperson of the South Side Homeowners Association. His fight against police brutality, social injustice, and many other opponents of equality continues on today, just as strong as it was 50 years ago. Charles Pierce L., you've got 10 minutes, and welcome to this program.
Is the name of the organization is Greater Syracuse Southside Homeowners Association.
Greater Syracuse Southside Homeowners Association. We got you.
And as George said, I've been an activist over 50 years in my community. And there's a lot of issues that needs to be addressed. And I think the forefront of it, we in our community, the African-American, brown community, and people in general in the city of Syracuse, we have to look at ourselves. The African-American community is the only ethnic group in the city of Syracuse in the county that doesn't have our own cultural center. Under the census that culture centers come under community development. Under census, the money that we brought in the last census in this city was over between $80 to $85 million, and none of it came into the African-American community. A lot of that resources went downtown, which is part of the 4th district. A lot of it went around some of our school districts, but the people in need never received any of that money that we brought into this city under the census. And those census, even with job training, we have resources centers in our community, like the Dunbar, which is the oldest African-American resource center we got in the city. We could do job training there, or the Southwest Community Center. Some of these churches can do those type of things for the solution of what I'm talking about. So these things that we have to come together collectively, sit down, evaluate what we really need and what we want as a people, and go get it. We have to go back to our roots. Right now, we don't even grow our own vegetables no more. We gotta go to the store where we don't know where that food or where those vegetables are being grown from. We need to get back to our roots. Even with medicine in a geographical area, people that know Syracuse, from Adams Street to Brighton, from Salina to Midland Ave, Salina to 81, those are 2 blocks areas. And in that area, we spend right now in this year and last year, $120 million come out of that area on a regular basis. In that area, 95% of those people look like us. So we have to start using the resource and keeping the dollar back into our own community. The 5 cents don't even last in our community no more. When I was a lad growing up, the dollar stayed in our community at least 7 or 8 times. We have to get back to, we got to get back to looking out for each other. The churches used to teach our schools after school. The churches used to be open to teach it. You can't even go into church now. Even if you wanted to go pray, you couldn't go. Ministers are saying, well, people are going to steal. Well, put Bibles in there. Let them steal the Bibles. Don't put the expensive stuff, but the house of God is supposed to be for everybody to come in and sit down and speak to their God in privacy, whichever way they want to do it, outside of your home. So there's a lot of things that can be taking place in here. And even with our cities, with our city employees. If you're going to work for the city of Syracuse, you should live in the city of Syracuse. Those are our tax dollars that when we pay for you, that you guys take it out, the people take it out and take it to the suburbs. That's why we got so many houses that are tax free. They're non-taxable. They're not paying taxes. Over 50% of our homes, we don't pay taxes. And we have to get back to that. If we want if we want our city and we want to be productive, we got to get back and teach each other and be together. Sure, we're going to have some conflicts, but you need to sit down and iron them out, statesperson wise. Even the Common Council, the county legislature, we need to start participating at those areas where we can have a voice. We don't have a voice collectively, and we need to, because we can solve our own problems. And the tools are out here. Money's in Syracuse is one of the richest cities in New York State. And we have jobs that left this area. We got plenty of jobs. We got to start being creative. I can remember as a young lady, in the 15th ward, just about every house had a garden. So when my mom and them didn't have or we didn't grow, the neighbors did and they shared it, and vice versa. So those, and we had tailors. We had tailors all over. We had at least 10, 15 tailors in this town. So we had entrepreneurs that own mom and pop business stores, drugstores and stuff. And we got to get back to that. We got, and we got to look out for our children. They're the future. And we are the best teachers. The police is there to protect us. Fire department is there to protect us. And AXO, we're here to protect our children because they're the future. And we got jobs just like with Central, with Bill Gates and Microsoft coming here now with the school, the STEAM school. Well, we're saying that we're gonna get 60% of our children from the city that's gonna be able to go there, and we're gonna bring in 40% from the county to go there. But yet we can't take 40% of our children to go out into the county. But they're going to bring 40% of theirs into our city and learn what 40% of our other people want to take and learn as well. We have to address those type of issues. Just like BOCES. BOCES is a school that teaches our children, but they charge them. Well, BOCES is an education. Our children should be learning those skills in school. They need to come back, and they are starting back in certain schools, high schools. For the high schools got certain things in there, but these trades and stuff should be free for free education for our children. So those are the things. And plus that, I'm also the chairperson of the Greater Syracuse Outside Homeowners Association, but I'm also the chair of that. We have some committees, and I work in conjunction with voter education. I do voter education constantly 24/7 in this community. We brought up the South Side. We brought it up 8% now from what I heard from the last election. And we're going to continue to do it. I want it more than 8%. I want to bring it up at least 20%. That's my goal, to bring it up from where we're at, because we don't participate in the process. We got over 12,000 Democrats on the South Side in the 4th District, and less than 4,000 come out and vote. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. It's unacceptable. No, we got, so, you know, we have the numbers and we have the things. We just have to start meeting and respect each other. That's one thing that, you know, I try to set an example as an elder in my community now. You know, I even reach out to the young children. You know, I reach out to them because they need structure. And you know, we got a lot of people in this neighborhood, even the 100 Black men. They got a foundation. But our children need to see you guys more often collectively. When I was a young lad, the older fellas used to say, if we were doing something wrong, our parents knew about it before we got home. You know, and you know, so we got to get back. And then the young men, there was so many elders around here. They dressed well. We started dressing like they dress. We went to school, you know, and we did things, and we protected our children. They protected us, so it's our job to protect our children and give them opportunity. Because you got to realize jobs are not plentiful no more. When I came along, you got fired from one job, you go across the street and get another job. That's not out here no more. That was industrialization. We're in the computer ages now. And a lot of times these things, even when I worked at Chrysler, you know, when they made transfer over into the technology aspect of it, we had college kids coming in there and they wanted our jobs. But the union, we were checked by the union. You said, no, you got to teach these guys how to do that. And some of the people learned, some didn't. I learned, so I stayed. Other people, they wasn't willing to learn true of the technology aspect of it, so they left. But or they got fired. You know, certain things to that nature. But you know, we should never be scared of what's that the future is going, because nothing stays the same. So you know, and you know, my wife and I lost my wife almost 6 years ago. She worked at Chrysler. I had a son out Chrysler. I had 3 daughters out there, you know, and we have 6 children. And I'm a grandfather 19, a great grandfather 12. So hey, I live comfortable. I'm a willer now. I live comfortable. You know, my children, I'm still teaching. I walk these streets every day, knock on doors. I see somebody doing something wrong. I address them. I give them their respect, and they sit and listen to me. So, you know, I'm always valuable to my community. My family's first and then my community. So there's a lot of things that we need to sit down, and even the chief was talking about the community engagement. I went to a couple of their forums, meetings they had, which was very good in relationship. And I'm glad he's bringing back the police athletic league, because that was very important in my youth here. And you know, our children need to participate in those things. Because what they're not using at home, leaving, you know, learning at home, they can learn in the boys' club. We had boys' club. We didn't have boys and girls' club. And I think boys should be in boys' club, girls should be in girls' club until they reach a certain age. Because men can only teach men, and women can only teach women how to be. I can't teach a woman how to be a woman. I can teach a young man how to be a young man and very respectful. Pull them pants up. Don't come in my house or on my block with your pants slagging. That's unacceptable in my neighborhood. So, you know, and you know, that's me, you know, and I've been doing it, and I'm gonna continue to do it. And if you're doing something wrong, if I see that you're on the other side, I'm gonna approach that issue.
All right, Charles, we're out of time for that presentation, but we do have some time to ask Charles some questions. So please put those questions in the chat. I also remind the panelists that the chat the Q&A. Put your question in the Q&A. The Q&A is active, and there's several questions for you, Chief Buckner. So you can actually type some answers to them if they're quick answers. And when we have the open forum, we can get back to you on some of those. But you can actually answer those questions while we're in this presentation by typing them in, and also mute your microphone as well. All right, so if you have a question for Charles, please indicate that question in the Q&A. We will, after we hear from Clifford Ryan, open it up, and if we have time, there's lots of questions. All right, for the Chief. So Chief, go ahead on in there and answer some of those if you can by typing your answers in. All right, Charles, one of the questions for you has to be, why don't we have a South Side inner city business guide? Why don't we have a South Side inner city business guide?
Why we don't?
Yes. Why don't we?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, because we when I was a lad, we had them, but I don't know why we don't have them. I believe the most important reason, we don't come together and sit down and collectively talk these things out among ourselves. I think that's the number one reason. We got resources. We got the SSIC Center where we can meet. Well, right now with the COVID, we're not meeting anywhere, with distancing and stuff. But we had the Southwest, we had the library. Matter of fact, the Homeowners Association, we was meeting at the library for a while. Now we haven't had a meeting since this COVID started. Because we just haven't had the meeting to grow and to stimulate information out. So like with the Food Bank of America, we started off giving food away for 100 boxes a week. Now we're up to 300. We're up to 325 boxes. But now we're transforming into a food pantry. And that's to answer you, we just have to meet. We have to meet, talk about these things, and make it happen.
Charles, one of the statistics that the chief gave was the number of homicides in the Southwest quadrant, which would include the South Side. What's your reaction to that, or why do you think the numbers were so high this year or that last year?
Well, I think the numbers are high because we got children, we got babies teaching babies, and these children are not outside of school, and when they're outside of school or they dropped out of school, they're hanging out on the streets and stuff, and they got loyalty among themselves instead of listening and going to a trade school. So with a culture center, we can do a lot of that. We can help we can direct those young men and young ladies, because there is ladies and men out there that's on the wrong side of the fence. So I think if we open up opportunity where they can start doing job training, etiquette, mannerism, and lift them up out of their area where how they're thinking, their thought process, we can change all that if we had a place up for them where they can come. I wanted the South Presbyterian Church to be a culture center, or the old Sears and Roebucks. All that can come under community development, George. That's money that we brought in $80 to $85 million in here for the last 10 years census. We didn't even see a penny of that. So it doesn't take us $40 million to $80 million to get a culture center or get the Sears or the Sears building. So until we come together and realize that these are the things that we want, and we want to address City Hall and the county, and even if we got to go to the state or back to the federal government with HUD about we're not receiving what we're putting in. That's like a farmer. I'm a farmer and I'm growing vegetables, but yet then I don't bring it into the city to sell it, or I don't sell it. I just let them go out and rot. Well, that's what we're doing with our census and stuff. We're not receiving any other benefits that we sign our census off to. So you're in job training. They got job training, but you got to go up on James Street for job training for these children. And sometimes our children are not properly prepared to go and do an interview. They're just not. And that's a big issue.
All right, Charles, we lots of questions. And one of the questions, we don't have time to really get a full answer, but had to do with what's the most effective way to get the community information as a whole due to COVID. We'll have to get that question answered in a minute because we've got to move on. And just so for those of you who are you're overloading the Q&A. I see them all. I'm hoping that we can get to all of those. Again, lots of questions for the chief around some questions for Charles, but lots of questions around the language that the chief used, and we'll get to that after Cliff's presentation. So our last presenter is Clifford Ryan, who also established OGs Against Gun Violence in 2015. He's a father, a grandfather, and a veteran of the U.S. Army. He has faced trauma after the death of his son 20 years ago, who was only 17 years old. In a recent biography, and I quote, "For Clifford's heroism and sacrifice to the community, with the privilege of this office of New York State Senator of the 53rd District, Clifford Ryan is presented the highest civilian honor available in the Senate, the Liberty Medal. This was presented by Matthew Montes, Office of Rachel May, State Senator Rachel Ray." And so now we will hear from Clifford Ryan. Cliff?
Thank you. My name is Clifford Ryan, and I'm an advocate in the community, born and raised here in Syracuse, New York. Grew up throughout the city on east side of town, and I am the founder of Our Generation Against Violence. And the acronym is the OGs Against Violence. I actually have been advocating ever since I faced that tragedy as far as my son, losing my son to the gun violence was concerned. And I've been off and on doing it ever since. But in 2015, I created the organization of OGs Against Violence. OGs Against Violence is a violence interruption organization, all right? And the work that we do in the community is exactly what it says. It's boots on the ground, going out into the community, interrupting violent situations such as shootings, stabbings, and fights. Also reaching out to our youth in our community. Those are very important things that we needed to do within our community. So I took it upon myself wanting to make a difference in our community to take the time to step up and try to have an impact in our community. To date, I've stopped 43 shootings, meaning individuals who had firearms getting ready to use those firearms on someone, and I was able to either stop them or talk them out of doing it, and stop 100+ stabbings within our community, physically altering them and stopping them from using a knife on someone. And I'm like 1,000+ fights I've stopped in the community just through going out into the community and engaging my community through the boots in the ground effort. OGs Against Violence also offers services in violence interruption, community outreach, community engagement, and anti-violence walks, seminars on street safety awareness, counseling for at-risk youth and families. I do presentations on violence prevention. I am trained in peacemaking mediation. I'm also trained in AVP, conflict resolution. I'm also a mental health first aid training. Also, I am on the Citizens Review Board here in the city of Syracuse. So, you know, the goal of the organization is to engage the community. You had the brother Charles and brother Buckner speak about, you know, engaging the community. And that's a very important part of what we do as an organization. I am a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have made significant progress. I am, as we currently speak, have a consultant, working with a consultant, putting together a violence interruption training program. and I'll be offering that training program to the city of Syracuse presently. And we're just trying to have the strongest impact that we can possibly have, as far as dealing with the violence that we face during one of our most deadliest years here in the city of Syracuse, 2016, which we had 31 homicides. That year, I stopped 10 shootings. Okay, so between 2015 and 2020, I stopped at least 10 shootings a year. And when I say that, I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence or come on the program being fake or phony. I actually put my life on the line in doing so. In the process of that, I did get injured. I was stabbed in my neck, stopping violence. I've sacrificed a lot as far as our community is concerned. I love my community. I want to continue to try to make it the strongest impact that I can possibly make within our community, working with every single organization in our community. I support my community 100% through outreach and all of the organizations within the community I have worked with, to include Syracuse Police Department in that regard. I'm in touch with Mr. Buckner as well, as all of our community leaders, city officials, as far as the city is concerned, and as far as all of the advocates within our city as well. We need a strong approach, and that's what I represent. I represent that boots on the ground, going out and engaging our youth, and they embrace you when you come out into the community and you reach out to them. A lot of people have this myth that these kids don't want to listen, these kids this and these kids that. If you take the time out to go out into your community and reach out to some of these young people, you can reach them. It's all in your approach on how you approach the situation. And I've established a respect within the community, so that when I go out every single day and I'm walking down the street, I get that respect because of the effort that I made. They know that I am very sincere about what I do, and I'm not straddling the fence. I'm not telling you to stop the violence, and I'm out there in the community doing the violence. All of these things are important as pertaining to how you go about going out there and doing what you do as far as advocating within our community. I also have worked in Syracuse City School District. I've worked on a volunteer basis, I've worked in almost all of our schools in our city, and I had success in that regard. Presently coming up, I will be doing a presentation for Hillside. And just trying to continue to have the strongest impact in the city that I can possibly have. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cliff.
You on? Yes.
Yeah, I'm got. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Cliff Ryan, and Cliff. We've got plenty of time for people to ask you some questions, and also, so we'll let those questions for Cliff come in now, and then if there aren't any, we'll open it back up to the entire panel. But Cliff, I'm interested to find out from you, as someone who is on the Citizen Review Board, how effective do you think the Citizen Review Board is in getting answers from the police and holding them accountable for allegations of misconduct?
I think we've made some progress, but I think more can be done. As I stated to several police officials, we are not there to as a witch hunt. We are not there to try to take anyone's job or to come at the police department in a negative manner. We want the Syracuse Police Department to do their job. We want that, and we welcome that. But we want Syracuse Police Department to deal with individuals on their police department that step across that line when it comes down to the laws of our city. And we know that that happens. I think that there can be much more improvement as far as that's concerned. Soon as that bridge is that gap is bridged between the Syracuse Police Department and the community, because trust works on both sides. And I understand we have to develop it as well as what they have to develop as far as the city is concerned as well. So I think more can be done, you know, to bring transparency between Syracuse Police Department and the Citizens Review Board.
Yeah, you talked about that trust. What do they have to do if the police aren't cooperating? How can you get that trust established?
That's what we need. That's what we need to work on. We need to have them held accountable, which will establish that trust within the community. When an officer crosses that line, and it's not just the Syracuse Police Department, it's nationwide, right? When an officer crosses that line of the law, and we know that officer has crossed the line of the law, that officer needs to be held accountable. And until those police officers are held accountable in that regard, that mistrust is going to be there. So that's where the review board comes in, and as well as like Spark and other agencies who ask for police accountability. That's where they come in. We're asking you to take the time to hold the officers that cross that line accountable, just like we do in our community. When individuals commit crimes, they're held accountable and they're locked up and they're sentenced, and they go and they do their time. Police officers have to be held accountable when they cross that line.
We've got a lot of time. We have some time left to get your questions in for Mr. Ryan, for Mr. Pearsall. And one of the questions that, and the chief has answered, if you're on Zoom, he's answered all of your questions in the chat. One of the things that did come up that I just want to make sure I highlight, Chief, was the question about body cameras and whether or not, who determines, I think the question was around the fact that, can the officers determine when they should wear them and when they shouldn't wear them? What is the protocol about body cameras and when they should be turned on?
Very, very clear and very simple. All police law enforcement activities have to be recorded. A law enforcement activity. If they're not conducting their law enforcement activity, their camera will be in buffering mode. I believe it was a young lady that asked the question, well, why don't they keep the cameras running for their entire shift? No city in America can afford to have 400 police officers with a camera running 8 hours a shift and storing that data. For you, George, who is highly technical, imagine what the cost would be for 24 hours a day with 35, 40 officers per shift, 8 hours of data loading up every shift. That you just couldn't afford it. So you have to be very specific about the things that you are recording. So any law enforcement activity that officers that have the camera has to be recorded. Those who are found not to be doing so when the policy requires it, there is an investigation and accountability for that.
So any stop, they got to turn the camera on pretty much.
Any stop, is the camera needs to be running.
Okay, got it. All right.
Now, there are exceptions if you're talking to a rape victim, if you're talking to someone that may be talking about a crime for an informant or something like that. There are small avenues that would not be recorded or would not be subjected to freedom of information, but all of those things are highlighted in the policy.
And one more quick thing, and then to Mr. Pierce and Mr. Ryan, Mr. Pearsall and Mr. Ryan, you made a statement around domestic violence in single parent homes, and some of the people in the Q&A, and I just want to address this live for the Facebook audience as well, or to the Zoom audience, that they wanted you to clarify that domestic violence is not just in single parent homes.
Yep, there were a couple of folks on there that felt, or at least they received it or thought they heard me say that single parent homes are responsible for domestic violence. That is not what I said. I said that there are three common denominators in violent crime: gangs, drugs, and domestic violence. There are socioeconomical issues that go on in communities that have high crime that precede crime before it comes to the surface. Unemployment, substance abuse, mental illness, single parent homes, absentee fathers. All of those things are some of the things you see in a socioeconomical cocktail of despair that are some of the pre-existing conditions when you see crime come to the surface. That was my exact statement.
One of the questions has to do with what role can the Black middle class play in the inner city? Right now, there's no real venue for interaction between the various Syracuse minority communities.
I don't understand that question.
That's for everybody.
Oh,
For me, they can step up to the plate and reach out to the community in that regard. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as engaging your community. You know, that's how I feel about it. I mean, you know, if you have the means to be able to reach out to young individuals within our community, step up to the plate.
So Chief, you said you didn't understand the question, and maybe Charles can help as well. What role can the Black middle class play in the inner city? Straight up, what role can they play?
What role can the Black middle class play in the inner city?
Yes.
First, don't forget where you came from. Second, community is something that involves us all. And if you're looking for something to get involved with, as I said, when I'm asked that question, 100% of the time, my response, get involved with youth. 100% of the time, that's going to be my response if you're looking for something to do. Do that through your church, do that through your nonprofit, do that through Big Brothers, Big Sisters, do that through after school programs, do that through something that is feeding individuals, kids who are hungry. Think about clothing for kids. Education is the great separator. I think the school system is a great place to look for avenues to have that impact. But just, you know, if you're middle class and you don't live in some of the areas that are having the issues, I would just say first of all, it's a great question for someone from the middle class to ask. But when we don't take care of the least among us, at some point, the issues that you're seeing on the news, they come to your door.
This is for Mr. Charles. And Charles, you can fold this into your answer. And here's another question. What are some tangible ways Syracuse City residents can support the efforts of your organizations? Greater Syracuse, the OGs Against Violence, and they also say thank you for all you do for the community. So Charles, both you and Cliff can handle that. You can also answer what the inner city, what the Black middle class can do to help the inner city, because the issue is they're saying there's no real way for people to connect and interact. That's what the premise is of that question.
I think the best way to connect with the people, and I did it, that's how I got started when I became a homeowner on my block on Elk Street. What I did, I started off with my block. I went down and talked to every one of my neighbors, started talking to them, and found out the issues on my block. So we started meeting as a block on the Elk block, the first 100 block of Elk. We started meeting. We started addressing the issues. From that, once I got all those neighbors good, we went up to the second 100 block and included them in it, and we started meeting at people's church. So we started meeting not just with homeowners, but with people that were renting as well. And then from that point, we started going around the whole neighborhood from Salina Street all the way up to Brighton on both sides. We started meeting with everybody. And then we started having, in the spring and the summer, we started meeting in the park right there, which is a park right now on Calvin and State Street is a park right there. We got the city to donate that park for us and gave that lot. So we used to bring our chairs out and we met there. During that period of time outside of that, I also tried to get block captains set up. They had a couple people, a couple of houses and a couple of blocks. I went to people on their blocks and said, you need to form a block captain. And we meet every Tuesday at the Beecham Library from 5:30 to 6:30, 1 hour meetings. And we need to just come in and get engaged and let's help each other. So, you know, that didn't materialize as far as the block act point, but I still work on that and I still address those same issues. But that's the foundation where you plant that seed, because you, in order to have a conversation about what we want to do for the future and how we want to unite our community, we have to come together first. And we have to see, let our children see that we're meeting. So those are the issues where we can start beginning to heal and solve the problems that we know that we have and that we can solve them.
Well,
but we just have to come together and meet.
I know the Zen Center asked the question, and by the way, that question about community and supporting you guys was from Shannon Fabiani. Cliff, the Zen Center says, can the Black middle class help you, and how?
Absolutely, by getting involved with the organization. Right now, as an organization, I am the only Black member of my organization. Okay, so I'm reaching out to the community right now, and I'm asking for our community to step up to the plate, reach out to the organization. Please get involved with this organization. Bring your ideas to the table. We are open as an organization for you to come in and bring your ideas to the table. I am the only African American on my board.
That says it right there. Chief, one of the questions has to do with the police athletic league, and I think there's some great things you can offer, because it's not just going to be athletics. I did have a briefing about it, so I know
he's going to get back.
Yeah, so
he's going to get back involved with the organization, Mr. Crowley. So we're going to welcome him back. As far as the organization, but I need people of color getting involved. And a part of that, Jordan, if I may, just a couple of extra seconds, a part of that has to do with establishing resources for the organization as an incentive for people to get involved, because the work is very important, and we want to be able to use that incentive to get people involved because of what the work encompasses. And we understand that aspect of it. That's why we're putting together the training program, so that we can apply for some of that money that Brother Charles Pierce speaks on, that comes into the community. When they gave Syracuse monies for organizations, OGs Against Violence wasn't on any list, and OGs Against Violence received zero resources. I've been sustaining the organization through private donations, and once we establish that aspect of it, resource-wise, then we can branch out and bring people in from that incentive to get involved.
And I don't want to gloss over the fact that you said you stopped 43 shootings, 1,000,
absolutely,
busted up 1,000 fist fights, 100+ stabbings, averaging 10 shootings per year. So that's for real. And I know I just kind of went to the next question, but I needed to stop and acknowledge that we do have a minute left, and I think we're out of time. Sorry that they got me. They said we're gonna. You want to say something about the? Go ahead. You question. 30 seconds about the police rec league and whether it's going to deal with other academic type things as well.
The police athletic league, will have 3 pillars that we use to measure the performance of our kids: grades, attendance, and conduct. So the education piece will be addressed, but I want everyone on this call to think about this. What has happened to our community when you're asking the police to educate your kids?
Think about that. For real. So going back to some of the issues that were raised here tonight, that means that this is just a reminder that there's work to be done, and the work that needs to be done must continue. I want to thank our panelists, Syracuse Police Chief Kenton Buckner, community activist Charles Pierce L, and also Clifford Ryan, OGs Against Gun Violence. Thank you all. Remember, we have remember that
we Black men.
Thank you. We do have a survey. Some of you said, I didn't know. Why did you need this? Why do you need that? We'll fix all of that for the next session. And don't forget Healthcare 2.0 and COVID-19. That's our next town hall. The presenters will be Dr. Eric Griggs, Director of Community Medicine for Access Health of Louisiana, and Dr. Sharon Brangman, Department Chair for Geriatrics at Upstate Medical University. That session will be on Monday, January 5th, 2021 from 5:30 to 6:30. Hope you can join us then. And don't forget to fill out the survey. The survey is in the chat. And on behalf of the 100 Black Men, I'm George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. Thank you for joining us on this call. Remember, January 25th, 2021, please fill out that survey. We need to hear from you, and we will get better at letting you know how to participate, including the surprise that you got on Facebook Live.